Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. I hope you're sitting down for this. This might come as a shock. But Putin might have lied to the Russian people. During his press conference 3 days ago, Putin stated that there were over 600,000 Russian soldiers in the occupied territories of Ukraine. This seemed kind of high, and sure enough, according to military intelligence, Putin exaggerated the Russian numbers inside Ukraine. This is according to the spokesperson of Ukraine's military intelligence, saying, "The enemy is giving distorted data to increase the information pressure on our country. They're trying to scare someone abroad or motivate their own domestic population. There are now more than 450,000 Russian soldiers fighting in Ukraine. The only way that Putin's numbers would be realistic is if they're including killed soldiers." So are there 600,000 Russian soldiers in the occupied territories? Sure, if you include the dead, but the real number is probably closer to 450,000. So this is the tricks that the Russians play. This is psychological warfare to demoralize the West, so they abandon their support for Ukraine. And for some weak-minded people, this is working. Depressing stuff at The Economist's end-of-year review. Putin's not winning on the battlefield, but he's winning in the heads of Western leaders. This is according to the deputy editor of The Economist. Every day on the channel, we talk about Russia's failures to capture the city of Avdiivka. Since October 10th, they've been assaulting this city every day, losing close to 1,000 soldiers every day. And this has been going on for almost 70 days. And they're not even in the city of Avdiivka. Pre-war population, only about 30,000 people. How are the Russians intimidating the West, intimidating leaders in NATO, when supposedly the second most powerful military in the world can't even take Avdiivka? And it's just Groundhog's Day, over and over again. I could show you the videos, I could link them down below, but it's just the same stuff happening over and over, every single day. Russia's committed war strategy is keep sending bodies until the Ukrainians run out of ammunition, and then you can overwhelm their dugouts. This is inhumane for their own soldiers. This is barbaric. Yes, they occasionally gobble up a farm field, but what significant strategic victory has Russia achieved in the last year and a half? Was taking the city of Bakhmut in any way advantageous or pivotal in this war? The Russians took the city of Bakhmut almost a year ago, and they haven't done anything significant since then, proving that taking Bakhmut for the Russians or holding Bakhmut for the Ukrainians didn't change the war really in any way. The front lines more or less have been frozen for almost an entire year now. Here's what friend of the channel, General Ben Hodges, has to say. Western defeatist whimpering helps Russia, whose only hope is we lose our will. Russia's in trouble. 315,000 casualties, 3,000 tanks gone, logistics systems, defense industry, and economy all suck. The Russians are importing ammunition from North Korea. Their navy is losing to Ukraine's navy, and Ukraine doesn't even have a navy. Russia's air force can't stop the supplies coming from the West. So don't believe it. The Russians are in pain. They're struggling. Is this a challenge? Is this hard times for Ukraine? Definitely. But the war is only being lost in the minds of certain leaders in the West. Which brings me to this liar, Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Here's a clip from Russian Media Monitor titled, "Pundits Want to Break the Ukrainian Spirits." So last week on this channel, I showed this clip from this press conference in which Mike Johnson was saying exactly what the Russians want him to say. Sure enough, the Russians saw this clip and decided to show it to their people on Kremlin state TV. So let me share with you what the Russians are saying about Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. So they start with saying a $200 million aid package from Biden, $900 million from the IMF. This is nowhere near the $61 billion the US was supposed to provide. Europe also put the brakes on a €50 billion financial aid package. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said that in order for the hypothetical approval of the funds, the Congress awaits Ukraine's cohesive strategy. It's waiting, but is yet to see it. So now they're going to show the clip where Mike Johnson is speaking. We need a clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win, and thus far their response has been insufficient and have not provided us with the clarity and the detail that we requested over and over. So in this press conference, Mike Johnson makes excuses. He repeats these two lies, saying there's not enough oversight for the military aid being given to Ukraine, even though 90% of the money never leaves the United States. The other 10%, more or less, is used for transiting the stuff over to Europe, and it's the Europeans that manage that money, not the Ukrainians. The other lie is that there is no clear objective from the United States. What is Ukraine's path to victory? The State Department has laid this out. The State Department has explained this to Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson is just talking bullshit to stall, to continue blocking a vote on a clean up or down bill for aid to Ukraine. A majority of House Republicans support Ukraine. Almost every Democrat supports Ukraine. Speaker Johnson is the sole obstacle preventing a standalone vote on a single issue to get Ukraine the military aid they need right now. And when it comes to the Europeans, European Council latest, EU leaders seek workarounds after Orban blocks Ukraine aid. Viktor Orban of Hungary is a toad. He's the sole obstacle, really, in NATO and the EU to getting Ukraine the aid they need. What is Viktor Orban's motivation? And for some reason, he favors Russia. I'm sure money is involved, money is changing hands, but Orban has suppressed democracy in Hungary and more or less is a dictator. And we're learning in this war that dictators want to stick together. So here's a clip I want to share of a member of the EU Parliament. She is a representative from Lithuania. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say her last name, but I want to share her thoughts on the situation with Hungary.
I appeal to the Commission, to the leaders of the Council. Let's start to think about the procedure to suspend the voting rights of Hungary. Our lawyers must find legal ways how to stop the destruction from both outside and inside. Who is Orban working for? Putin? And why is the EU doing nothing to stop him? Can you not see how the EU is being destroyed from within? We do see, I say. Unfortunately, the instruments to stop him are too weak. This answer is disappointing because the people want an effective EU. It cannot go on like this.
If any country in NATO or the EU stops becoming a democracy, stops having free and fair elections and free speech and free press, we need systems in place to address this and potentially expel these members, or at least make it serious and clear to them that their membership rights could be lost unless they immediately enact reforms. So what can the Ukrainians do? Aside from ask for help and thank what they're given, shell shortages force us to limit firing, Ukrainian troops tell the BBC. Here is a reporter from the BBC who just came back from the front lines. This is his assessment. The mood. The war will drag on for much longer. Russian troops attacking daily, ammo running low, US military aid is stalled, EU's money is blocked, but Ukrainian soldiers say they'll continue to defend their land no matter what. By stopping Western aid to Ukraine, that doesn't end the war. The Russian military is incompetent, and they're not taking their stated objectives anytime soon. So the only thing achieved by not militarily and financially supporting Ukraine is the Ukrainians won't be able to fight as effectively. Cutting off Western aid to Ukraine will just cause more people to die, and it'll give the Russians hope that they can achieve their objectives. Taking Zaporizhia, Kherson, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Moldova. Not a realistic objective, but Russia is retooling their entire society to have these wars stretch out for decades until they can reconstitute the maximum extent of the Russian Empire's borders from 1914. So Ukraine has to adjust. The Ukrainian armed forces do not consider it a priority to retake territory and defend the current front lines. At the moment, the main goal of the Ukrainian armed forces is to minimize their losses, protect their soldiers. This is according to the German publication Bild. So I'm sorry to you as the viewer, if you follow these channels on YouTube supporting Ukraine and you enjoy seeing map updates in which the Ukrainians take this field or capture this village, we're not going to have very good news for you probably for most of 2024. Given that aid is diminishing or being blocked, Ukraine has to adjust. And this is a war of attrition now. The Ukrainians have to conserve their forces and their resources, and they've got to outlast the Russians. We need some kind of political or economic collapse or revolution inside of Russia. Realistically, at the rate we're going, Ukraine is never going to get all the resources they need from the West to militarily defeat and expel the Russian forces. Russia is regenerating faster than the West is willing. It's not a matter of capability, it's a matter of will. Russia is regenerating faster than the West is willing to support Ukraine. But the good news is there's plenty of indications that once again, Russia is struggling. During the press conference, Putin had to answer this bizarre question about the price of eggs in Russia. Russia charges 4 egg producers with price fixing. 4 Russian egg producers face anti-monopoly charges for price fixing just a day after Putin was forced to apologize for the surging costs of staple goods. No, I don't think a monopoly in Russia is what is causing the price of eggs to go up. It's inflation. It's hyperinflation. It's Western sanctions strangling the Russian economy. Russia's central bank raises key rate to 16% amid growing inflation. The central bank has been grappling with the economic fallout of the offensive in Ukraine that includes Western sanctions, a surge in government military spending, and the call-up of hundreds of thousands of men. Here's a quote from Russia's central bank official. Current inflationary pressures remain high. Annual inflation for 2023 is expected to be close to the upper bound of 7 to 7.5%. And remember, the Russians lie about everything. They're only willing to admit inflation is 7 to 7.5%. And this is interesting because inflation in Ukraine might be looking better in 2024. It's still pretty bad. The Ukrainian economy is struggling under war. But Russia's central bank rate, which is the primary tool to combat inflation, Ukraine's central bank interest rate is now lower than Russia's. You can see this chart showing over time, Russia's now at 16% to combat inflation, and Ukraine is 1% lower at 15%. Still pretty bad, but we'll take what we can get. And it is coming down to money. G7 countries have moved closer to confiscating Russian assets to hand them over to Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, Washington, D.C., which has never publicly supported confiscation before, said that there was a way to seize funds in accordance with international law. So we're talking about two different kinds of money. Sanctioned individuals who had assets in Western countries. Can we seize an oligarch's yacht, sell it, and then give that money to Ukraine? We're currently trying to do that. The other pool of money is that $300 billion that Russia's central bank was storing in the West. There's a lot of pushback from the banks because there needs to be a legal process. There has to be a ruling from a judge, and ideally, the Russian government gets representation in court before you can seize that money and then give it to Ukraine. But if Congress is going to be obstinate and the EU is struggling, then yes, the Biden administration and the Department of Justice here in the United States might get more proactive about seizing this money, finding a way under international law to then redirect it to Ukraine. Let's make this happen. A goal for 2024. Still, nobody has been in contact with the imprisoned Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. According to his lawyer, he was told that Navalny left the prison for an unknown reason to be transferred, but no one has seen or heard from him in 10 days. So either he's dead, or Russia has a very impressive underground political movement to smuggle Navalny out of the country, to start a resistance movement somewhere else. My money's on he's dead, and Putin doesn't want to admit it yet. Could have been an accident, could have been suicide, could have been deliberate. Eventually, Russia's going to have to admit to their people what happened to this guy. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Lithuania hands over munitions in the latest aid delivery. So we've got Lithuania has already provided Ukraine with 500 million euros in defense assistance, according to their ministry's statement. Lithuania is among the leading military donors to Ukraine as a percentage of their GDP. Lithuania is not a very big country, but given the immediate threat they face, they're doing everything they can to help support Ukraine. The World Bank allocates over $1 billion to Ukraine, primarily from Japan. These funds will be directed to the payments of pensions, teachers' salaries, and support the internally displaced persons, allowing Ukraine to focus its internal resources on the needs of their military. Thank you so much, Japan. Japan has also expanded sanctions against Russia. The restrictions include 135 people and companies from Russia and 5 other countries. They're also going to introduce a ban on the import of non-industrial diamonds from Russia. So, double thank you, Japan. Final couple feel-good clips. The first one's from journalist Maria Avdiivka visiting the city of Dnipro. She wants to share this Ukrainian street art gallery.
A very cool artistic place here in Dnipro. It has already Russian propagandists jailed, and it has a wall with Russian classics written and read in a very new way. So these are all Russian old pictures, but with a new meaning, like this one or this one, and many others. This is the new symbol of Russian ballet. Very artistic, very interesting. Highly recommend you to visit if you are in Dnipro.
If you're in the city of Dnipro, check it out. Final clip I want to share with you is a Ukrainian defender on the front lines using her free time to practice English.
Or hardly ever Every now and then. I like to go somewhere, for example, to the cafe with my friends or with my boyfriend. After, not important, after головний verb, main verb.
You can hear the bombs going off in the background. She's in a basement somewhere, doing her best to practice English and prepare for her brighter future. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.